Good afternoon, my friends. This is the Grimflayer. Hope you're all doing very well today. It's Golgari time. It's a day that ends in Y, so we're going to play some Golgari today. And yeah, we're on the play. We've got a pretty nice blind game one hand, right? We've got kind of the proverbial 3.5 lands to 3.5 spells, if we count the treetop villages a little bit of both. And 4 land drops with a tireless tracker is always good. We've got 2 pieces of interaction, one that's often very good early game, one that is our nice catch-all with 2 plus for 1 potential. So it looks pretty good. That said, the hand's a bit slow, and we don't know whether our opponent will play much to the board, which is why we always lean toward wanting hand disruption, at least 1 piece of hand disruption in blind game ones for our interaction. That said, this is not a hand that we can mulligan. Both lands and both colors of mana in abundance, painless mana, definitely all good. Our opponent will mulligan to 6, and they will keep. So here we go. There's no need to play the treetop quite yet. We can play it next turn and not really lose out on anything. In this way, we can fatal push something this turn if they've got it. But it's just going to be Marsh Flats and pass. Okay, fair enough. Verdant Catacombs could be a good draw if we get to start doing tireless tracker things, but that makes our hand revolve even more around the tracker. But that is not usually a bad place to be. She is quite good. Alright, they find another Marsh Flats, and it looks like they're going to start fetching. They're going to play something here. They take 6 damage from their lands. That's a good start for us, and they are in Abzan colors, and it's a Tidehollow Sculler. Okay, so here's something that's really, really important to know. So the templating of Tidehollow Sculler, when it enters the battlefield, your target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card and exile it. When Tidehollow Sculler leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to its owner's hand. Those are 2 separate abilities, so if you respond to the Tidehollow Sculler's trigger here, so we could let the card resolve, its ETB trigger would go on the stack, and we could fatal push it, but that would be very, very bad, because the way these older cards, the templating on them works, is that, okay, so that will trigger his leaves the battlefield ability, which will go on the stack and resolve first. There is nothing to return, and then its enter the battlefield ability gets to resolve and takes away our card, permanently exiling it. So that's very, very bad. So do not ever respond to a Tidehollow Sculler ETB trigger like that unless it's a really weird situation. Now, right now, we have 2 pieces of removal, so we don't get punished by that because, you know, it's probably going to take one of them, and then we can get the other one back next turn, right? So that's definitely a thing. And newer cards like Kitesail Freebooter, you can safely respond to their trigger because the enter and the leaving, you know, the things that happen when the card enters and when the card leaves, it's all wrapped up into the same ability. So if you respond to a Kitesail Freebooter in this exact same situation with a fatal push, you will reveal your hand, but nothing will be taken from it. So just a very important thing to know. You don't want to lose a game based on not knowing the difference between the templating on a card like Sculler and a card like Freebooter. So the Sculler will resolve, its ability will resolve, and they'll take the fatal push. Sure. We didn't really want to run out the tracker before turn 4 anyway here, so we're pretty happy to just fatal push this thing while we can. Get our fatal push back. Excuse me, I think I just said fatal push. We're going to Maelstrom Pulse that thing, get our push back, and be pretty satisfied about that. We drew another land for turn again. We're really all in on this tracker, so let's hope that she can stick around and do some good work for us. They play Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, and pass. Alright, so they're stuck on 2 lands, which we could already kind of tell from the way they sequenced their lands, right? They didn't, even though they needed to get 2 shock lands, they didn't end step one of these because they were just hoping not to thin out their deck. So that's pretty good for us, right? Because Thalia is a fine card overall, but because we're really land flooded, and because we're at least going to go all in on the tracker to start, we can accommodate her attacks just fine. Of course, we're going to play cleanly around any removal and just go ahead and get 2 clues right away, get an Overgrown Tomb down relatively pain-free, and leave some basics in the deck for Path to Exile, because they are a white deck. So it looks like there's some kind of interactive Abzan creature decks. I don't know if we can really call it a Taxes variant, but they do have some tax style cards here so far that they've showed us. And they're going to play another one in the form of Voice of Resurgence. Sure, you got it. It's a nice value card, that's for sure. And they're going to get aggressive with the Thalia. We're certainly not interested in taking that trade here. Just 1 turn of Kraken Clues and they can no longer attack into us, so that's we're very happy to take 2 there. And we're drawing more lands, but hey, you know what? At least we've got the tracker. We would be pretty far behind if we didn't. So I'm pretty comfortable leading off on the Thoughtseize here. The reason for that is we could push the Thalia first, right? And then we could Thoughtseize, and the Thoughtseize would be cheaper. But I'm not sure we want or need to push the Thalia. They might have another one in hand, for example. So Thoughtseize is going to let us know about that, and just generally let us know what we want to sequence here and why. So even though we pay the tax, and we could have avoided it by pushing first, I still think this is the correct card to lead on here. And we have clicked through. My bad. We have clicked a little too hastily. So they had an Eternal Witness in hand, which of course we ended up taking. They had Restoration Angel, Nullhide Ferox, which is a new card out of the latest set that's actually quite strong against our deck specifically. This is kind of like an Obstinate Bailoff style effect, where if it's non-targeted discard, or indeed targeted discard if it's the only legal take, it gets to basically blow us out coming down for free. Definitely need to be wary that this is in the deck with regard to our Liliana of the Veil activations. It's also a 6/6 hexproof, which is pretty sweet, and you can't cast non-creature spells is the downside, but between that and the Thalia, we can safely assume that this is not casting too many non-creature spells. Renegade Rallier, Kitchen Finks, and Eternal Witness all have strong enter the battlefield triggers, and they can all be blinked by Restoration Angel. So this is just like an Abzan value deck. You could call it Abzan Taxes, you could call it Midrange, but to me, Midrange implies something like we're doing with a lot of interactive non-creature spells in addition to some grindy power. They're just kind of an Abzan value deck. I don't know what I'm going to call it when I title the video, maybe just Abzan. But anyway, if anyone has any suggestions as to the precise name of a deck like this, let me know. But I took Eternal Witness here, so they're choked enough on mana that I didn't want to take a 4-drop here. Even though Restoration Angel is a very high value 4-drop, obviously we're not going to give them the free Ferox on the field. So a 3-drop it was. Renegade Rallier is probably got the highest ceiling here in terms of efficiency, but it's also the most conditional. Kitchen Finks is a nice grindy value card, but I think I can beat this card. I don't think I'm going to really be blown out too hard by the Finks here. So Eternal Witness is just probably the highest value take in context, so that's what I did. And yeah, I'm inclined to get aggressive here. I was kind of cool either way, whether they took the block here or let it through. I was always kind of planning to crack a clue this turn. I don't think I want to fatal push either of the things they're showing me, so getting in for an extra point of damage is fine. We get to deploy a creature land, we get to make another clue, and we'll pass. So the opponent... Oh, okay. Yep, it's not a misplay. It's not them, it's just them showing, look how land screwed I was, and I finally drew something else I could play, and it was just another Thalia. So they just show us the other Thalia and scoop. So, yeah, we were, we definitely had them really far behind, even though it doesn't necessarily look like it. Like, just the sheer value that we represent on board, they're going to have to start chump blocking next turn because our tracker's huge. We're getting a ton of clues. We have removal in hand. We have card advantage at the moment. We were just too far ahead. They just their tax effects did not tax us enough to make up for the fact that they were stuck on 2 land. So this is definitely, though, a deck that lines up really well against mid-range strategies in some ways. Now, Thalia can be medium against us. In some spaces she's great, in some spaces she's not. But cards like, Voice, Eternal Witness, Kitchen Finks, Rallier, Ferox, Angel, these cards are all specifically good against grindy mid-range decks. Like, definitely seems like a matchup that can get pretty tough. So let's go over to the sideboard and see how we want to side against this Abzan value deck. Alright, my friends, sideboarding against this Abzan taxes, Abzan value, a deck that plays a lot of creatures in the 2, 3, 4 drop slots, and a lot of them are 2-for-1s. So what do we do here? What do we do? Well, so we saw a limited number of cards in their deck, and their archetype is not something that you can necessarily be sure exactly what's in there, right? So, but we did see Renegade Rallier, Kitchen Finks, and Eternal Witness all using the graveyard. From the few cards they showed us, there's a lot of those. So I want at least 1 Nile Spellbomb for sure. I think the other 2 can stay in the maybe board for now. There's going to be a lot of maybe board cards here. We're going to need to really figure out what to do precisely, but there's going to be a lot of maybe board cards. We can leave 2 there for now. We don't necessarily need to clear out their graveyard that much, but access to some number of spell bombs will be viable here. And Engineered Explosives is kind of a maybe board card as well, because they showed us a few things along the 2-drop slot for sure. They also showed us the Voice of Resurgence, which can make some tokens, but they also showed us kind of a worrying number of 3 and 4 drops as far as the utility of EE goes. It is, of course, a total that we cannot reach as far as making 3 colors of or 4 colors of mana with this deck. It's just not going to happen. So maybe board card, we'll have to see. Maelstrom Pulse is a for sure yes. They're just playing a lot of creatures, a lot of high value creatures, probably a lot of 4-ofs. We can get some 2-for-1s. We just need all the removal we can get. Golgari Charm. So what did they just show us? They showed us Thalia, Eternal Witness, a Persisted Kitchen Finks. These are all X1s that we can kill. This is also kind of a neat combat trick. I don't know if they're likely to play Flicker Wisp or Blade Splice, or if they're that far in to the blink effects, but this has enough targets that we've seen, again, without knowing much more of their deck, that I think it's definitely a maybe board card. Maybe it just comes in. Fulminator Mage, again, I hate to just kind of hedge here, but this is also maybe. They showed us that they can get land screwed there, and they're, of course, a 3-color deck. This is not bad in mid-range matchups anyway, no matter what they are. Nissel Vital Force, I, again, think it's a maybe. The only reason it's not a for sure yes is because they are a Thalia deck, and taxing non-creature spells making her go to 6 is a little bit rough. But she still might come in because she's just that powerful. Notic Joke. Languish is a for sure yes, in my opinion. It doesn't kill the Nullhide Ferox, but it's going to kill everything else that we saw. Definitely a huge fan of that in this matchup. Ditto Kalitas. Kalitas is, built for these grindy creature matchups. And the 2/2 zombies will line up well enough against a lot of their stuff. Collective Brutality. So this is just kind of a kill spell here, right? Like, the drain is definitely relevant too, don't get me wrong. So it's potentially a drain and a kill spell for some weenies. But again, they don't have that many really small things necessarily. And a lot of the things they do have that this can kill have already become a 2-for-1. And the fact that they're playing Ferox and Thalia means I expect them to have almost no non-creature spells to take with the discard mode here. So the fact that we're already considering some stuff that kind of only hits weenies like EE and Charm means that I'm cool to just leave this out altogether. Definitely don't want Duress. Definitely don't want Surgical Extraction. So we've got 4 cards that are coming in for sure, and we've got a full 7 maybe board cards. Now that is a lot. We certainly won't bring them all in, but let's take a look at the main deck and see what we want to bring out, and that might help us narrow down what comes in. So, shout out here to Flying Delver, who recently made a new independent primer for BG Rock or Golgari Midrange on MTG Salvation forums. He has some great matchup specific sideboarding protocol you can check out, and he is doing something that I haven't heard too many people talk about, but I myself actually started doing not that long ago, like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I'd never really done it much, if at all, before, but I started siding out a land in some of these really grindy matchups. Like, for example, I did it in a recent blue-white control video, just because that gives us, you know, higher threat density, and we're likely to hit our land drops over the course of a long game anyway. So, do we want to side out a land here? It's a little bit questionable because they are a Thalia deck, but I think I do. I think I do want to side out one land here, and it's usually going to be a Blooming Marsh, so let's start with that and see how it goes. Alright, we've got Collective Brutality. Like I said, it's not really one to come in. Do we want the 2 that we have here? I think that's a pretty fair place to begin. Don't know. Short answer is I don't know. I think these are maybe boards to come out. Again, we just kind of need to see more of their deck to get more precise here. But Tazagur the Golden Fang is going to line up really well against a lot of their threats. Liliana the Veil I still like, but she's a little riskier with Nullhide Ferox floating around. This is a deck that could play Obstinate Baloth on the side as well. So that combined with the fact that they might have some kind of throwaway creatures for her, I think we can side out 1, potentially even 2. Let's say we're siding out 1 for sure, and the other one's a maybe to come out. She's still going to be very, very good at edicting in the context of a bunch of other removal before and after her. Still going to be really nice. Lily the Last Hope is just great here. She's got a lot of clean kills with her +1. The grinding is going to be pretty real too here, so we want both of her. Tracker's great, Pulse is great. Assassin's Trophy is very nice because it can kill these 4-drops they're showing us. Now, do we care about giving them a land that much? I honestly don't think so. Like, I think we just need all the answers we can get, so we probably have to leave all 3 trophies here. And they play enough 3 and 2 drops that I'm going to leave the Decay too. Tarmogoyf should be great here. No reason it shouldn't be. And Skoos. Skoos is an interesting one. I think we need to retain all access to all 3 Skooses here, because it might be a slightly better way, slightly more proactive and broadly useful way to mess with their stuff like Renegade Rallier and Eternal Witness than bringing in a bunch of Nile Spellbombs. And this is, of course, going to have a lot of fuel over the course of a long game, too. So I honestly think we have to leave in all of those. And we have, you know, Fatal Pushes, of course, staying. So I think we need to trim away at some discard, because that's what we usually do in a mid-range matchup. But I don't want to lose all of my discard because, you know, we need to know about Restoration Angels, and preferably we need to take them because they can really mess with our spot removal. We also need to be able to take away at least some of these 2-for-1s that they get, like answering stuff like Kitchen Finks, Rallier, Eternal Witness after they hit the table is not that good. So this is a really tough one because a lot of our stuff is good, but we, you know, so it's a good problem to have. but we still need to maximize our efficiency, because again, their deck seems like something that's kind of set up to prey upon decks like ours. So what if we just start out by saying we're going to take 2 discard spells out, and I think even though our life total does matter, I think we need to leave the Thoughtseizes in to hit Restoration Angel. So what if we start out like that? So this is a 60 we could submit, but I think we're going to like some of this other stuff here better than maybe Brutalities and it maybe the Lily. So I think now that we're mentioning how good Skooz is going to be here, we can say no to the Spell Bombs, and I think we're going to say we want only 1 of Charm or Engineered Explosives. Now, after having actually played this matchup out, I think I would opt for the EE, but I believe in at least my game 2 I brought in the Golgari Charm for this match you're about to see, and then I think I went back and swapped it back out for the EE. So if I'm showing you the ideal sideboarding for a deck like this, we're going to opt for EE over Charm, right? And then, so 1 Brutality is a fine cut here, and this is a fine 60, and honestly, so is bringing in all 3 of these, or maybe something like this, or something like this is totally fine. So if we want to hedge toward just, you know, playing our most high value, recursive value permanents here, it would look something like that. And again, the big risk with these Planeswalkers, especially with Nissa, is if Thalia is going to tax them and make them a little bit too tough to resolve. But I guess we don't even know if Thalia is going to be in their deck, right? They saw us just go big with Tireless Tracker, make a bunch of land drops. They might just think Thalia is too low impact and has to come out, at least in some number. I don't really know. So there's a lot of room for nuance with the sideboard here, but it's going to look something like this, in my opinion. And like I said, maybe play Draw Matters. Maybe we could get interested in Fulminators on the play, things like this. But Fulminators are viable, so this is a nice 62, and cutting any 2 cards from here is also totally fine, if you ask me. Even bringing back a Collector Brutality, totally fine. Lots of things to do, but when in doubt, play the more powerful cards, right? Nis is a powerful card, Lily's a powerful card, Engineered Explosives, these are all individually big, powerful cards. So if you're unsure, that's not a bad metric to follow. And yeah, my recommended 60 against a deck like we're facing would look something like this. So let's go to game 2 and see how it treats us. Okay, my friends, game 2 against this Abzan value deck, and we have a very powerful hand with a lot of really desirable cards, but only 1 land. And remember, my golden rule is that, you know, unless you are in a matchup where you need a piece of hate to have a realistic chance of winning the matchup, like Dredge, for example, and you have that hate in your hand, then you keep the 1-lander. Otherwise, you should mulligan it. Keyword here being should, because I decided to roll the dice here. I was feeling really lucky. So that's a do as I say, not as I do moment. I don't recommend keeping this hand, but I did. It's especially true because it's not like we just are stocked with 1 and 2 drops. We have, for all intents and purposes, 2 4-drops in our hands. So definitely not an example of me violating one of my own golden rules. I think I rated this cantrip a little bit too highly here because I'm not used to seeing just a cantrip. It's hardly a Serum Visions, right? It's just something that you don't want to just fire off for the cantrip. So definitely a high-risk keep, but look at that. Never punished. Never punished for rolling the dice. That said, we still need to hit a couple more of those, so we're not out of the woods yet as far as land goes. They've got a Kasali Pride Mage, okay? I like this card a lot because it's a reasonable beater. It contributes to a even bigger beater going in against a wide board, and it's got the disenchant mode. But we didn't see him game 1, and I don't know if they should really be in against us from the side. But maybe they're just a main deck card that stuck around. Hard to say. Here we could play either the Skoos or the Tarmogoyf, but the Skoos can't trade with a Pride Mage anyway, because it's going to have its Exalted trigger when it attacks. So I'll just play the Goyf, trusting that it will grow as we begin to interact, hopefully starting next turn. They will shock in a dual land and play another Casal, or excuse me, they will play a dual land tapped, and then play another Pride Mage. So they've got double Exalted, hitting us for 4. And here's our Golgari Charm, looking pretty bad against their 2/2s here. Let's see. We'll play a Swamp. We're going to play a Scavenging Ooze. And here we're just going to Fatal Push. So we kind of have to Fatal Push things when they're tapped out more often than not, simply because we're worried about Restoration Angel. Like Restoration Angel, the fact that it can blink a target in response to spot removal and leaves behind a 3/4 flyer is just, we are going to really struggle to beat that happening to us even once in the course of a close game. So definitely just want a main phase removal. And while Fatal Pushing a Pride Mage is not the most exciting there, it still grows the Goyf, lets us get in. Again, we're not going to block this Exalted thing anyway, so sure. They've got a Siege Rhino. Oh boy. That's going to be a big one. It's a 4/5 trample. It's got access to an Exalted trigger. It just Lightning Helixed us. We're definitely on the back foot here. Alright, we draw an untapped 4th land, so I will say right off the bat here that we were very fortunate to just hit our land drops. That's what we needed to do to have a chance against a progression like our opponent has had. In here, so, you know, we could have gone Tracker into land, but then it's a 5/6 trample. And we don't have a clean 2-for-1, or a clean double block, because the best we could do there is use the Forest to eat their Pride Mage, and then the Rhino just kills both our Skoos and our Tracker as a 5/6 Exalted. That's not good. That's not how we're going to win this game. So we need to play the Kalitas here. We might have to chump block. It's going to depend on what they're going to do. Maybe we can take another hit. But this is going to give us the best chance of, you know, top decking a removal spell and starting to stabilize. He life links, he can make a zombie. It's just the play we need to make there. So they're cracking in with a 5/6 before they do anything else. Yeah, I think there it's just, we just take 5. And they're going to pass. Well, that's a little scary because they probably have a Restoration Angel in hand. Definitely a little bit rough. So we'll make a land drop. We're going to play an Isle Spellbomb because we didn't draw removal. It's just, you know, the window for Tireless Tracker has not really arrived yet. We're under too much pressure. So here we can just kind of bluff removal, and they're going to go for it. Okay. So they flash in the Restoration Angel. They're going to target the Siege Rhino to get another trigger. So here, this was an interesting decision point, right? Because if I had cracked the Spellbomb in response, targeting them, or I guess what I would have done here. Yeah, see, this was a really interesting line. So I can crack the Spellbomb in response. I would probably have to target myself. And that gives me a Revolt trigger, and it gives me a draw. So I could draw either Fatal Push or Assassin's Trophy, hit the Rhino with Angel's trigger on the stack, and that's a pretty good blowout for me. I get the Kalitas trigger with make a zombie, I get to stop them from blinking the Rhino, and I get to just kill the Rhino. But it is also higher risk, higher reward, because if I don't draw either of those things, then I'm just in trouble. So what I wanted to do here is consider, you know, I did consider doing that, but I'm like, you know, I can live next turn unless I have another Rhino off the top, which I'm not beating no matter what I do, by using Golgari Charm as just kind of a combat trick. That might work really well for me. and I still have this around. I can still have an ooze activation, so maybe we should have rolled the dice there, but I think I should be able to live this turn regardless. So perhaps suspecting some kind of a combat trick they're going to get in the sky. And I'm at 2, and yep, this is not going to do it. I still need to hit a fatal push here. And I didn't hit it anyway, so definitely not something I was going to beat either way. But I guess I miscalculated the life total there a tad, and I probably did need to respond to the trigger on Rhino, right? Definitely a little bit of a misplay on my end, but like I said, we just were not beating that with a Scavenging Ooze as our top card anyway. So a little bit rough there. I don't think we really sideboarded incorrectly, except for the fact that this Golgari charm is looking a lot worse than I thought it did. So like I said in the sideboard tech, I went back and took that out, and we have an Engineered Explosives in its place now. But we just didn't have quite enough interaction. Our Spell Bomb was clunky. Our threats were a little bit clunky, but they just kind of were one step ahead of us. They were able to hit us early with some Exalted stuff that was a little too big for us to block. And then they were able to get a little bit of reach and evasion with a Rhino that picked up the Exalted trigger. And then once we got our big lifelinker on the board, they were able to go over the top of us in the sky. So, again, with Exalted. So that Exalted trigger was quite relevant all throughout the course of the game, and we just kind of got run over. This can definitely happen. We had a few too many threats, not quite enough interaction, and we just couldn't keep pace with them. So definitely a little bit of a rough one. We definitely didn't play that last part ideally, so apologies for that, but we were dead no matter what we did. They just got us. So this is what I mean. This type of deck can really run over the top of us, and the way it can blank spot removal, the way it can grind really well, the way it can get big or go wide or get recursion. They've kind of got it all against mid-range decks, right? So anyway, we'll be on the play for Game 3. We have a little bit better idea of what we're up against, and let's see if we can take them down. Game 3 against Abzan Value, and we've got another risky hand, another one that would be risky to keep. Now, our risky hand last game ended up panning out insofar as the risk was alleviated by our top decks. We kept a one-lander, and we found all the lands we needed. We still got run over, but it wasn't really the fault of our risky keep. It was the fault of our spells not lining up well enough against their creatures. Here, this is an even riskier keep. And powerful though it is, just without black mana, this discard stuff just gets so much worse. I don't think we can keep that, even though that was even more tempting in some ways than keeping the game one hand. So we will mull to 6. Our opponent will also mull to 6 in a show of solidarity. Thank you, opponent. And, this 6 is unexciting, but fine. We're definitely not going to mull it. Abrupt Decay is going to be fine. Tireless Tracker with 4 lands, including a fetches, got the late game locked up pretty well, so our opponent will go to 5, and then they're going to stay at 5. We've got another swamp on top. That we can bottom. We can bottom that swamp. So, Overgrown Tomb tapped. Pass to you, opponent. Well, they're just going to imitate us, so fair enough. We'll play a swamp. We'll pass, holding up Abrupt Decay. Maelstrom Pulse is a good draw. Voice of Resurgence. Alright, that's something that makes our removal look a little bit less good, that is for sure. Yeah, I'm at the point here where I'm not under that much pressure. We're going to go, obviously, Tireless Tracker into Fetch Land next turn pretty much no matter what happens. And so we're going to plan to take a couple hits from the Voice, but after cracking one clue, Tireless Tracker can wall off the Voice attacks, and I think that's definitely better than spending removal here. Especially the Maelstrom Pulse, because it can be a 2-for-1 down the road, potentially. So we're going to get hit for 2. All part of the plan, all part of the plan. Opponent grabs a Temple Garden, shocks it in, and plays a Kitchen Finks. Okay. They've definitely got a lot of value going on, so we draw another fetch land. This is kind of a repeat of game 1 in that we don't have all that much going on outside of the tracker. Of course, we have some good action in hand, but so far it doesn't look very good against their specific creatures. So this is a tireless tracker game. We're going to probably take a hit for 5 here. Feels pretty bad. And they've got a Siege Rhino. Dang. They're just doing it. These are all things that are very, very good against us. And yeah, I still don't think we can take a block there. We just have to take it. We're down to 9. You know, the reach of that Rhino deck coupled with how undesirable it is to spend spot removal or to make trades against cards like these. Yeah, it's pretty rough. Tarmogoyf is a decent draw. We're going to go ahead and pulse this. We definitely have to take care of this card before a Restoration Angel shows up and before they can untap. So here, even though our life total's under pressure, we're definitely going to get our 2 clues here. And we're going to play the Tarmogoyf. So now the other reason pulsing there was necessary is because it makes the Goyf a 3/4. So we don't have to crack a clue and go all in on the tracker here. As far as a blocker goes, we have the 3/4 Tarmogoyf that can successfully wall off some attacks. And that lets us also get in with a tracker, which is definitely nice. So we have all the clues we could ever need to win this matchup. We just need to stay alive. What do they have here? I didn't see green, so I got my hopes, I didn't see green, so I got my hopes up. But turns out they just mistapped. They have another Siege Rhino. Man, this is so bad. We are on the ropes. But they decide not to press their luck. Maybe they're a little bit out of gas, or maybe they're, who knows, but they decide it's not worth attacking into the Tarmogoyf to get another couple points of damage across. I am okay with that. I need all the life points I can get right now. Fatal Push is a wonderful draw. We have the mana to do a lot of things here, so we're pretty free to crack a clue first to get more information. Grow our tracker. Blooming Marsh, sure. So we'll play another land. We're going to crack another clue here. We got a Tireless Tracker. Okay, so we did take away our ability to double spell that turn, but again, there's nothing very appealing to hit with an Abrupt Decay here. We were always going to hit this with a Fatal Push. That was always something that we had to do, again, while they're tapped out before they can blink it. But here, Abrupt Decaying either of these things is not very good. We're better off just walling off their attacks and finding more cards, growing our tracker, all that good stuff. So they're going to pass, and they didn't make a land drop. So we know they're not just flooded, they are representing Restoration Angel. So definitely one to watch out for. Tasigur is a pretty good draw, we are still in danger of losing to Evasion and Reach in the form of Angel and Rhino, but right now it looks like we're doing pretty well at clogging up the ground. So once again, with a lot of mana to spare, we're going to start out by cracking a clue, see what else we find. Collective Brutality. So I did leave one of these in, I believe, here. And Brutality is a pretty good draw here, actually, just simply because, like I said, we are starting to take over the game, but we are way behind on life. So, make our clue, make sure we get that value before anything else happens, and I'm simply going to drain them for 2. Feels fine to me. We don't want to mess around with spot removal here necessarily. Once again, it's of low impact against their board, and of course Restoration Angel is potentially something that they could blow us out with anyway. And yep, they're just going to throw out the Angel. Fair enough. They don't want to not use their mana. So Angel is going to come in and blink the Kitchen Finks, huh? Well, we can play at instant speed here. We can Abrupt Decay the Kitchen Finks, and this doesn't feel so bad. We don't obviously want to play any spells on their turn, so we're going to be going Shields down with Abrupt Decay, and the reason we don't, of course, is because that makes a token from Voice of Resurgence. So we would be Shields down as far as Decay is concerned next turn anyway. This is still on our end step, so we can still do that without triggering the Voice. So we don't get to crack another clue on their end step, but otherwise this is pretty nice. It's just like as good as removal's going to get against Kitchen Finks. They, of course, don't get to blink it here with the Restoration Angel because it's an illegal target. It's not the same target that they specified with the ETB trigger. So while they still get the persist value, they at least don't get another 2 life and a full 3/2 on top of that. So maybe we still could have just held up the clue there. It's definitely hard to say, but that was a decent enough window for an Abrupt Decay. And they're going to get in for 3. Yep. We definitely need to find an answer to that angel, that is for sure. Ooh, Noble Hierarch post-combat. So they missed an Exalted trigger. We have a Fatal Push. Very, very good. So now I said they missed an Exalted trigger. Maybe they were thinking, maybe they have another angel in hand, right? And maybe they were thinking, I'm just going to attack for 3 and then hold up my other angel. And then maybe post-combat they said, oh, well, no, I actually want to take the window for a Hierarch. Hard to say, right? Hard to say. But of course, if they were going to do it at all, they should have done it first. But we're going to crack a clue to get Revolt and to find more information, get another draw, and we have Fatal Push. Sweet. We were always going to use that first push on the angel, but now we have another one. So what do we do here? Well, let's push this and make sure they don't have any other tricks. They do not. So that's good. That's step 1. We are not going to die in the air next turn. So here we have a we could play 2 things in the second main phase. We could play both Tracker and Tassiger. We probably won't play the Tracker, but Tassiger is a 1-mana play. So knowing that we have another way to follow up with a second blocker, we're going to get in here and see what our opponent does. They might want the block. They actually decide not to. Okay. Kind of like in game 1, I was kind of okay with either there. And now it's time for the Tassiger. So let's figure out what to delve away. We're going to leave Maelstrom Pulse and Fatal Push. Those are both really good targets, and they are instant and sorcery types, which means the Goyf gets to stay as a 4/5. The opponent has land and creature, so that worked out pretty perfectly. So we'll play out the Tazzy, and we'll pass. This is pretty nice, too, because, you know, of course, we don't really want to cast a spell on their turn, but if we need to, we can crack a clue and then push with a Revolt trigger. But right now they're blocked off along the ground. Nullhide Ferox. Yep, that's a big boy. That is a big, big boy. Interesting. So they just attack with the Voice, huh? Well, I think this is a way for them to get a bigger body down. It's going to be a 4/4, and then they, I'm sure, have more gas in hand. They can make it a 5/5, maybe a 6/6 next turn. So I get it. I get it. And maybe they also thought we'd get spooked and wouldn't really know what to do and would let the damage through, and then we're in Siege Rhino, lethal range, but not going to happen. So here we will just crack a clue on the end step. Languish. Wow, Languish is nice. Languish is nice. It's going to kill their whole board except the Ferox. Okay. And look at, like, this is why Languish is such a perfect card for this setup. We have 3 creatures on board, and we have a sweeper effect in hand, and none of them are going to die to the Languish. Ooh, but we have Kalitas as well. So leaving the Nullhide Ferox around is actually potentially something we don't want to do. We can also Fatal Push this thing, but we need a Revolt trigger, and we need to pay the tax. We need to pay 2 to make it lose all abilities until end of turn. So that's 3 mana for Revolt with a clue plus push, and another 2 for that, so that's a 5 mana investment to kill this thing. So we cannot quite kill their whole board this turn with push and Revolt and taking out the Hexproof and Languishing. We can't quite do that, so what do? Well, Kalitas was our draw for the turn, and we are gonna get... I don't know if we can even call it greedy, right? Because I don't think it's that greedy. We just are still going to be able to languish everything next turn, most likely. And we're just going to get a ton of value out of it. And I don't think they're going to be able to do anything particularly crippling this turn. Yeah, once again, we're going to get in with the Tireless Tracker. This might incentivize them to chump block, which is going to get us a zombie. If so, they're just going to take it. Okay, fair enough. We're still fine with that. So here we're going to Fatal Push this. And we're going to pass. Just not messing around. We're just making sure that we're still pretty well insulated against anything they could have. We're just not going to die this turn. They play another Noble Hierarch and a Renegade Rallier for no value. So, you know, this card has, like I identified in game 1, it has a really high ceiling, but it also has the lowest floor of any of those recursive value cards. Sometimes it is just a 3-2. Just another thing that's going to die to this Languish. So this thing is an 8/8 Hexproof swinging in. That's pretty good. But I'm perfectly fine double blocking here. Losing only 1, so trading 1 for 1 and getting a zombie on top of it. Pretty good. And then our opponent just scoops it up. They don't even make us fire off the Languish, but we, of course, would have end step, cracked a clue, untapped. Depends on what we got, but there is a world in which we could Languish before combat, or maybe attack first and see what happens. Maybe we wouldn't even need to play the Languish, but either way, they have a board of weenies left over at this point, and we have Tasigur, Kalitas, a zombie, a Tireless Tracker. We're going to have 4 cards in hand at the beginning of next turn and 7 mana on board. They're just dead. They're also at 4 life, and to be fair, so are we. But again, we've got the lifelink, we've got the lethal that we're threatening on board, and they didn't even know about it, but we also had a Languish. So that was a real scary game. We were on the ropes. Double Siege Rhino was pretty brutal, but hey, we stabilized and we did Golgari things. We ground out the opponent. We found some big bombs. We grew our Tarmogoyf, our Tireless Tracker. Again, you can't say enough good things about this card. This drew us 5 cards and finished the game as an 8/7, and indeed was the only thing that actually assigned damage to them, if I recall correctly, throughout the entire game. So it started the clock and made it so that it really was just hopeless for them at this stage of the game. Whereas if the tracker was not big enough to get in, you know, they would have a nice big life total buffer at least. But Kalitas played a nice role there. Tasigur was great. Tarmogoyf was great. We just kind of, our interaction lined up pretty well, even though they started off by presenting Voice of Resurgence into Kitchen Finks, things that are really good at blunting the efficacy of our spot removal. It still ended up being very, very good. And again, Tireless Tracker was clutch there because this constant stream of clues allowed us to get Revolt triggers on command to take care of Rhino and Angel, cards that we would have really struggled to beat at those stages of the game. So definitely, like, I love these games. I love these types of slugfests, especially when it's not just a BGX mirror. Because the nature of BGX mirrors, don't get me wrong, a lot of those are really fun games too, but those can feel a little bit more swingy and a little bit more dependent on who gets the right top deck at the right time, just because there are so many shared cards. So when we're against a deck like this, that has so many cards in their deck that we don't play, like Angel and Rhino, and these cards like Rallier and Witness and Voice of Resurgence, it just feels like a truly epic game of Magic. And, we kind of stomped over them game 1 because they got stuck on 2 lands. And and they drew multiple Thalias and bad things like that while we were just going off with a tracker. And then game 2, we kept a risky land and a hand, low land, risky hand, and we got our lands, but they still just kind of ran us over with some Exalted triggers, basically Pride Mage into Rhino into Angel, and it was just a nightmare. We just were always one step behind, and then game 3, we started off slow. Like, we didn't really do much until it was Tireless Tracker on turn 4 time, so they were able to put us on the ropes, but being on the play let us stabilize maybe just that turn earlier than we would have otherwise, and let us really just have a completely dominant and commanding board presence by the end of the game. So, not a super common deck that we're seeing on the other side of the table, but it certainly looks pretty spicy, looks pretty cohesive, functional, and indeed powerful against what we're trying to do. Seems to be well set up to battle against mid-range decks, and we ended up just getting there. So, good game, well played to the opponent. I think they played out really well. They seem to know when to crank up the pressure and when to play a little bit more cagely. So that was well done by them, and it was an enjoyable match to pilot as well. And I hope you enjoyed watching it. So, as always, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you're continuing to enjoy the content, and look for more to come. I will see you for the next video, and I hope you have a great day.